What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Points Per Podcast. Last week, we did this same video, but in reverse. We told you our favorite picks in every round of your fantasy football drafts. Today, we're switching it up on the other side of the coin. We're talking about the worst picks you can make in every round of your fantasy football drafts. Getting a little negative, but we'll explain, give context, reasons for why these fades exist. It's not always because these players are bad. In fact, most of the time, they're not bad. It's just because of situation. But I say we should get right into it. I'll pull up the ADP list here. We're still working off best ball consensus rankings because I think it's a little bit early for redraft. But Will, I'm going to start with you. I know that the first round's tough because these players are here for a reason, but who are you fading in the first round?
So I think the player that's closest to a fade in the first round for me is going to be JSN. I just think the price for him is pretty expensive nowadays. Obviously, he was a bargain last year because we were still wondering if he was going to pop off the way he did. And he came off a wide receiver one season. He's now going as the wide receiver three off of draft boards. And it's just a completely different situation for him. Now he has a new OC with Brian Fleury. Obviously, coming off of last year, a lot of things by Clint Kubiak were schemed up directly for Jackson Smith-Njigba to succeed. It's not that I think talent-wise Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to fall off of a cliff at all. I think he's still going to be the same guy. He's still going to get open. I just wonder if that same volume is going to be there and if the same scheme is going to be there. You also got guys like Rashid Shaheed who have been getting a lot of camp buzz, who should get a lot more volume in this offense as well. I still think Jackson Smith-Njigba is elite. It's just a little expensive for him right here is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, Will. I think some regressions expected. He obviously had a ridiculous season last year. But I think all the points you noted were right. Like that offense it definitely won't look the exact same anymore. I mean, they don't have I guess, either first or second most dynamic weapon in Kenneth Walker, depending on how you feel about him and JSN. Some of the coaching staff has changed. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that this is rich for a player that we might expect that, just not to do quite as well again.
Yeah, first-time play caller as opposed to Clint Kubiak. And yeah, all the points that Will made about like the crazy level of efficiency and volume that he got last year, trying to repeat that again would be tough. So I agree for all of the same reasons. But Vishy, who's it going to be for you in the first round?
Sure. I'm going to go with another receiver, which kind of goes hand in hand with our last video where we had running backs as our targets. But that's going to be Justin Jefferson. And I hate saying this, he's ridiculously talented. Not even a fade or at least favorite pick. It's the round one. All of these guys are there to take the top 12 players, fantasy assets possible. But if you have to pick one out of these guys, I think he's, like I said, he's very talented. But coming off of what for him at least was a down year, I think the current situation's unknown. He's going to have a new quarterback with Kyler. I actually kind of like Kyler in fantasy because of his rushing upside, but it's really difficult to see Justin Jefferson reproducing like some of his elite seasons with high volume, catching passes all over the field, which is not exactly what Kyler is good at, or at the very least, like justifying a round one value. When it's like much more plausible to see guys like a CD who goes right before him doing that in an offense that should kind of mirror what we saw last year, or several of the running backs that come right after Jettis, who I just think on a points per game basis could outperform him rather easily this year.
Yeah, Will, I want to hear your opinion because I don't know if you agree, but I know that you had him on a lot of teams last year, and so you went through this roller coaster experience.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. Nine really made last season unenjoyable. I don't even want to say his name, but Justin Jefferson, it's tough to, like you say, describe because we've seen Kyler Murray be able to uphold wide receiver one type seasons with like DeAndre Hopkins in the past. But I don't know if this is the same Kyler Murray that we're getting this year. Obviously, he's still getting used to the new system as well. He looked decent in the last preseason game, so I'm hoping that he's catching on to with the more first team reps that he's getting. But I don't, like you said, it's tough to be super optimistic about Justin Jefferson with just all of the unknowns going on with his team.
Yeah. So JSN was my kind of honorable mention fade for this round. Justin Jefferson, I agree, was my top fade. We thought he was quarterback proof heading into last year. We had seen him produce with Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall. And we thought that KOC was a quarterback whisperer, and maybe he still is. But, we saw that kind of theory got proved wrong last year when he finished as the wide receiver 36 in points per game and didn't have a single game over 20 points in half PPR formats. I don't think that Kyler's going to be that bad. I certainly think it's going to be an improvement from what we saw last year. But to your point about the last time we saw him support a top 12 receiver being D-Hop, that was 6 years ago. It was his second year in the league, and he got DeAndre Hopkins to a top 12 finish. But since then, we haven't seen an Arizona Cardinals receiver be in the top 12, and we saw him kind of hold back Trey McBride for 3 years of McBride's career. The fantasy community thought he was like allergic to the end zone because in 39 games with Kyler, he caught a total of 7 touchdowns. It took 14 games with Brissett for him to catch 10 touchdowns and essentially turn into like prime Travis Kelce. So for those reasons, I am a little bit nervous of what the receiving weapons can achieve from a fantasy perspective in an offense led by Kyler. Still love Jefferson, still think he's one of the best receivers in the league, but I would be a little bit disappointed leaving the first round with him this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, that being said, like the Justin Jefferson Kyler Murray pairing could be like one of the most underrated ones like in fantasy circles currently. Like, we don't know. It's absolutely possible that like this new environment's great for Kyler and they go crazy together. And that would be kind of fun to watch. But I'm out of this match. He's my fade.
And I think that's a really good point too. Like the Cardinals have just been a terrible organization for such a long time. Like that stuff wears off on players. And so maybe a fresh start will do good for Kyler. But we will have to see. But let's move on to the second round here. And Vishy, we can start it with you. Who's your first fade from the second round?
It's going to be Devon Achane. Look, rounds 2 through 4, they're so fun this year. Honestly, Achane included. I don't want to talk about fades in these rounds. I think it's not even like a top-heavy draft. It's like it kind of goes on for a while. It's a fun one. But like if we look at this crop, which is like all the running backs that go right around him, from Barkley, Kenneth Walker, Chase Brown, Marion Hampton, Derrick Henry, I love all those guys. Or the receivers that are going later, which like might have some questions marks, but not really based on the news and how the news is trending. I just think Achane carries the most risk out of the crop here. It's like basically just that. And then usually our risk tolerance depends on upside, but like I don't think his upside necessarily is better than that. Basically every name I mentioned. That offense, like in Miami, might literally just be historically awful. McDaniel was gone, which I think is very important because he, I think, inspired and enabled a lot of what Achane did. And so I think like his range of outcomes is massive, but like skewing towards the negative direction. So for me, like seeing him go this high, it's really risky. And so he's kind of my fade. But again, I think he's also extremely talented, but just I like everyone else here better.
Will, what do you think?
I agree that he's probably the biggest risk out of everybody in this group. I'm not as negative on Devon Achane. I think, where the efficiency and stuff is probably going to fall off a cliff, I think there's going to be a ton of volume here. And I think also with Bobby Slowick becoming the OC and he was the passing game coordinator previously, I think that's something Devon Achane is still going to at least be involved a lot in the passing game. I know we talk about Malik Willis and how much he likes to run the ball and whatnot too, but I think that this team knows that Devon Achane is one of their best, if not their best receiving asset on the team. So I think he's still going to get some burn, but I definitely do agree out of risk, he is the biggest risk out of this list.
Yeah, he was my top fade too, which, like you said, Vishy, like it sucks to say because he's one of my favorite players to watch. But yeah, I think the McDaniel to Slowick downgrade scares me. I think, Will, you make a good point that Slowick was already on staff, and so hopefully there'll be some continuity there. But just like from a play calling down to down basis, I'm worried about what that drop off will look like. And then the Tua to Malik Willis change, I think, is a huge one. Tua was the check down king. He was top 3 in running back target rate over the past 2 seasons, I believe, maybe top 5 at worst. And Achane saw like a top 3 target share among running backs in those seasons as well. Malik Willis is the exact opposite. He's a rushing quarterback, and I think Jacob Sanderson coined this term, drop back conversion rate, essentially looking at how many of a quarterback's dropbacks turn into a target. And Malik Willis is by far the lowest on that list. I want to say 23% of his dropbacks do not result in a target due to scrambles, sacks, and throwaways. And so like, even if his stylistically he changes and he does look for Devon Achane more, the overall amount of passing volume is going to go down. And I just think the pace of play is going to go down with this coaching staff as well.
I think that's absolutely fair.
All right. So that'll be it for Devon Achane. Will, who do you have in the second round?
In the second round, I've got Drake London, and I promise you guys, this has nothing to do with Drake London whatsoever. I love Drake London as a player 100%. I hate Tua Tagovailoa, and if this last preseason game is any indication of what's going to be going on this season, I think Drake London is going to get a ton of targets coming his way. I just don't know how many of them are going to be catchable or how many of them are going to be good. And I'd assume at some point we're probably going to see Michael Penix this season. And even then, I still don't know how good things are going to get or even if that's an upgrade on the situation. So I guess what I'm saying is for the team to have been as confident with Tua and to give him as much positive reinforcement as we've gotten this offseason, and that to be what we see in preseason week 1, it's not very positive for me right there.
That's fair. Those are really fair points. But I think it's just to be scared about drafting Drake. I've been a big fan of Drake London like all off season. That was I guess before that preseason game, which is shivering my timbers. Drake's fun. I think so. Yeah, I struggle because of the volume argument. Like kind of like similar to how kind of you were talking about H-Chan. Like I think there's very few people that are going to draw targets other than him. Like I mean, Zachariah Branch. I don't know if he's going to be pulling like 5 catches a game, even that. Like, I think that we expect to see a lot of volume going to Drake, and I think he's talented. And I guess like evaluating him against like maybe like who goes out right after Neighbors, like he doesn't have the injury risk, so it's really appealing. But I mean, honestly, like I agree. I think that I haven't clicked on him that much as I kind of have stylistically liked his fit because there, like you said, there's question marks. Atlanta might not be good, and Tua might not have a brain, so his brain's kind of
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he was my honorable mention fade. It scares me for all the reasons that both of you brought up. Like, I think that the volume is going to be there, and we've seen him produce on teams with bad quarterback play and just like bad overall offense. And so I don't want to full fade him, but I am a little bit nervous that Atlanta is going to be a dumpster fire this year. But let's move on to the third round. Will, back to you. Who's your top fade?
So somebody I was pretty hot on earlier this offseason that I've definitely cooled off on a lot these last couple of weeks has been Devonta Smith. I've been a pretty big Devonta Smith lover, but now I don't know. The situation is just there's a lot of warning signs here. One, people ragging on Jalen Hurts and saying he is what he is. I don't really buy into that too much. I'm just trying to look at the situation for what it is. And since AJ Brown has left the team or he's been rumored to leave the team, they've drafted Mekhi Lemon in the first. They signed Hollywood Brown. They traded for Dontavian Wicks. They re-signed Dallas Goedert. It's getting to the point.
Stowers.
And drafted Eli Stowers. So in the time where they should be sort of reinforcing that Devonta Smith is going to be the guy, they've done nothing but bring in other talent around him. And I think that in a situation like that, it doesn't bring a whole lot of confidence. I also would like to say that, Sean Mannion is with the team. This is his second year, I believe, as like a coach in general in the NFL. Mm-hmm. First as an OC. And he's coming from Green Bay, which yes, it's a good environment offensively, but it also hasn't really been an environment where they've provided explosive plays or a wide receiver one, even for a matter of fact. So I'm not super confident that that's going to start right now with a brand new team and a brand new situation. I could be extremely wrong about this. It's just there's a lot of warning signs here that say the volume might not be there for Devonta Smith.
I would. It's hard to full fade him, but again, we're talking about the top 3 rounds. All of these guys, it's really tough to pick anybody that you truly don't like. I think the third round, honestly, was the most difficult for me to decide. For most of the offseason, I would have agreed with you, and I think I still might. I think it just depends on Mekhi Lemon's hamstring health.
Yeah.
If Mekhi Lemon is struggling going into the season, or if this lingers throughout the season, then I think Devonta Smith is a fine pick. If Mekhi Lemon is fully healthy, then I'm fully on board with you.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think he belongs in the third. And I think it's right to be scared though. Like I actually didn't even think about every player that you started listening to players. I was like, this is going to stop soon, right? And it kept going.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I was also high on him. I think I still am. I think he belongs in the third, and that's mostly because I don't want to discount him for what Kevin Patullo did and the effect that he had. And I might be a little biased about him, but I think I agree with you because of the other receivers in this round and the next that are like really easy to justify as being on par or better. So I think it's a great call out. Shifting over to my fade here, I think the one I wanted to bring up and have a little discussion about was Josh Allen. We talk about the Josh Allen tax every year. Like what are you giving up to take a QB in the third round or so? And he's excellent. I actually think like he's, and even like we're looking at best ball ADP here, I think he's actually like an even better best ball ADP like play. Like I think he actually belongs really where he is, because he'll consistently give you those good weeks that tally up over the course of a season. But like in redraft, given this year and how good the third and fourth round are, and how any of these receivers like have like, I mean, shoot, like top 3 overall are receiver upside with them. It's just hard to draft Josh Allen. Like I think I could believe that like any of the top 10 QBs we see on the board here could be QB1 on a week-to-week basis. And so then like if it was a year where, you know, the third and fourth rounds maybe look a little bit more like a dead zone, that'd feel different, I think. But given all that, I haven't really been picking up much Josh Allen, and I think I'll stay that way.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Josh Allen's going to be great. He should be the quarterback 1 drafted off the board, but the opportunity cost in this round with the players going around him, exactly like you said, I think is too high. And with the quarterbacks going as late as they are, like I'd rather have Lamar, May, Daniels, Caleb, Lawrence, Herbert at their respective costs versus Allen in the third, I think.
I 100% agree. I mirror all of those takes.
That being said, in our league, I will take him. It's just
throwing us off the
sandbag begins. Yeah. I think also like if they lean into James Cook again, which they should, and now they have some like a more competent receiver. Like DJ Moore is not going to be awful. He actually looked kind of nice in the preseason game. Even I don't think Josh Allen will have to play as much hero ball. And I think that
that's fair. He was the first guy on my list. I have a couple, we already talked about Allen. So these guys are kind of fringe for me. Ibuka's on my list, but really only because of the toe injury. If that turns out to be a turf toe, which it's sort of speculating, which people are sort of speculating it to be, and that ends up lingering into the season, with this run of receivers with Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Zay Flowers, Ibuka, McConkey, Higgins, Waddle, like they're all kind of the same to me. And so finding any little thing is enough for me to like push them closer to the back of the tier. And so if he's dealing with a turf toe, then that would do it for me. And then Javonte was also kind of in the running for me, which is scary because he's probably in the best offensive environment for fantasy production. And so it's hard to call him a true fade, especially when he's going all the way at the end of the round. But I will say he slowed down considerably at the end of last season. Through the first 5 weeks, he was averaging 20.7 points per game and 4 targets a game. But then for the remaining 11, he was only averaging 12.7 points per game on 2.8 targets. His yards per attempt also decreased from around 6 to 4.3. I think he's a fine pick where he goes based on a situation. I just don't really see like the crazy upside ceiling case that some of the guys that go around him have. And also, if any of like the Jadon Blue camp hype is legit and he gets more involved, then that's, going to make things worse for Javonte.
Absolutely.
All right. So that'll do it for round 3. And Vishy, we'll go back to you for the 4th round. Who's your biggest fade?
This is not an easy exercise to do. I'm going to go with Cam Skattebo. Boo.
No, my heart.
I know. Yeah, I had to. Come on, we had some controversy on this channel. I know a lot of analysts are high on him. I know some analytics actually do favor him. So this could be a spicy take, and he had some phenomenal games last year. But I think like my fear is that that's anchoring him a little bit higher than maybe what he should go, given his injury history, his lack of desire to not get injured. Like a non-stellar, like it's not like it's a top tier O-line by any means. And like unfortunately like a play style that could end up giving Tyrone Tracy more volume than is worth. And again, this argument's mostly grounded in the fact that if you look at a couple of names before and kind of throughout the round, I do like them. And I think that the injury risk alone is enough to me to deter me a little bit. I guess you could say like the legal risk with like Josh Jacobs is also a super fair point. I think I feel the same way about him as well.
Will, what do you think?
Hey, man, you already know I love Cam Skattebo. The points you're making are very good. I don't think they're bad. I just think he's going to be on the field a ton, especially with Tyrone Tracy showing the pass blocking skills he had this past weekend as well. I think he's going to be on the field a lot. It's just a matter of if that ankle holds up, and with his style of play, he definitely is an injury risk. So I definitely hear you there.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the Scatabo centrist, I guess, of the three of us. If we're talking about guys that go around him, I'm really into Burden and Swift. I would probably take either of them over Scatabo. I also see the argument for volume for Scatabo, and like with his mentality, he's not going to be hesitant coming off of his injury. He's going to play like his old
That's
self.
true.
I am a little bit worried about the Giants' just overall fantasy point scoring environment outside of Malik Neighbors really. And what we've seen from Dart, like if he goes down, honestly, I guess that could be a good thing. Jameis gets on the field.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of up and down on whether I would fade Scatabo, but I do understand all the points you made there, Vishy.
And I guess transferring over to who my fade is for this round, I'm looking at Travis Etienne Jr. Etienne, however it's pronounced. I believe Etienne, right?
Yeah, whatever, man.
Whatever he wants us to say. But the reason why I'm fading him is because of one person, and that is Mr. Alvin Kamara. And I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to compete a whole lot for, ground touches or rushing attempts at all. But it's the receiving side of things that he's really going to be a problem in. Now, when we're looking at last season, Travis Etienne had pretty much no competition in the backfield. Tank Bigsby got traded away from the team. Bashal Tutin was there, and they tried to ramp him up a little bit, but I still don't even feel like – I think he ended the season with like 14 targets or something like that by the end of the season. So when you're looking at Travis Etienne, 40% of his points last year came from just receiving total. 6 of his 13 touchdowns were from receiving, and I think 3 of those 6 were from, them beating the shit out of the Jets. So it's a situation where it's like, I don't think that same thing is going to repeat if he's also competing with Alvin Kamara, who is statistically one of the best receiving backs of all time. Now, whether he's fallen off a cliff or not, that's to be seen, but this is coming from a team where Kellen Moore doesn't even really target running backs a ton to begin with. So when you got that mixed in with him competing for targets, you're really depending on Travis Etienne being efficient on the ground and getting things done. And that's historically not really something he's done in his career.
Yeah, what do you think, Fish?
I think those are all very fair points. Yeah, I think, it's going to be hard to keep Saints legend Kamara on the sidelines for like 90% of the game and snaps. So, Etienne going, however you pronounce this guy's name, going to the mid fourth, like it is rich. It's a little rich.
Yeah, I agree with all the points that you made. I don't want to be fully fading him just because of the pace that this offense plays with. I think that that could be valuable for him, but I think you lay out a great argument. Like receiving work for running backs is one of the highest. It's one of the first things you look at in terms of fantasy production and like ceiling outcome for these running backs. And so if he's not going to be getting a lot of that, then it's tough to say that he's a target for sure. For me, I have 2 guys that I want to mention just kind of quickly. Teteroa McMillan, we'll throw him in this bucket as well. That's got nothing to do with him. It's got everything to do with the fact that he's catching passes from Bryce Young, and I think that he's bad. And so it's tough for me to draft him in this group of all the guys that we've already talked about. Super talented crop of players going in the 3rd and 4th round that I would probably take over him. And then also DJ Moore. I don't think he's very good anymore. I do think there's plenty of opportunity there in Buffalo for him to exceed my expectations. And so I don't think he's going to be a full-on bust by any means. But I think that he's a worse player than he has been earlier in his career. And I do think, like I was talking to Will before we got on this video, he was going to be a fade for me in the 5th round, just because Jameson Williams, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Parker Washington, I really like that group. And so I'd probably take any of them over DJ Moore. But DJ Moore was going in the 5th round as of yesterday. And then he had that preseason game with 2 big catches, immediately moves up. So even if I move him up my rankings a little bit, I'm going to continue to be slightly behind ADP wherever he is on the board.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think DJ Moore's price would be a little bit more palatable if he was going in the 6th, late 5th, but going in the 4th is a little crazy. It's a little bit too rich for my blood as well. I agree.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Although he also could absolutely surprise and just have a great kind of relationship with Josh Allen in that offense.
It's very true. This one could come back to bite me, as could a lot of these. But we'll see. We'll let the record state.
Nah, he's the only one. Everything else has been spot on for.
All right, let's move on to the fifth. Will, I believe it's back to you, right?
Yeah, for the fifth round, I just mentioned him. I'm looking at Bayshell Tootin as a fade for this round.
Whoa. Okay.
I just don't expect this running back room to completely be his running back room. I also don't expect him to get all of the passing downs work either. I expect this to be a full-on committee between him, LaQuint Allen, and Chris Rodriguez Jr. And to be honest, I think Bayshell Tootin's going to get a lot of like that dead zone 20 to 20 yard line work. So like you're going to be really, really dependent off big explosive runs, which he's fully capable of. I'm not saying that he's not. He is an explosive athlete. He's extremely fast. I just don't want to draft a guy that I'm completely dependent on that if that's what I need at running back.
Eric, you want to go first here?
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
I think that Will's points are true. I was in on Tootin. I think that where he is at currently is like a fair price, but his ADP has gone up. I think it's important.
Yeah.
And I was just checking kind of his best ball ADP trends. And I mean, he has just been steadily increasing, I guess, since the NFL draft or so when they didn't really replace him. Go ahead.
That's true, but within the past couple weeks, he's been shifting between the fourth and fifth round. Like he was kind of in this range a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he's been plateauing. I think Will brings a good point. I could see him being a beneficiary of the Jags offense being good as a whole, which is never something to discount. But I think Will brings up a good point that like there's no reason necessarily think he will have the entire room to himself, or that that like it is difficult to imagine it's just going to be him and only him get 9% of the running back snaps. So I think that's a fair point. Like this is pretty rich, and I think this is just generally a running back dead zone where when you got Parker Washington, Mike Evans, and all in the round, like why target Tootin? I think that's a fair point.
I think that everything both of you guys said is true and fair and reasonable. Maybe I'm just being too stubborn in the fact that like I just don't think Chris Rodriguez is going to keep him off the field. And like we saw Tootin be very good at the goal line last year. So like I don't know why we would have to sub him out at the goal line for Tootin. LaQuint Allen, I think, will be involved in like long down and distance passing situations, but like early down passes that they're scheming up to the running backs, I don't think he'll be on the field. I think Tootin can handle that. And as you already mentioned, like he is explosive. We saw that from him in college, even if that didn't bear out in a very small sample size in his rookie year. I'm just I think that the upside is high enough to kind of differentiate him from the rest of the running backs in this group. So that's the only one that I would push back on, but I also fully understand the case that you're making, and I think it's a good one.
That's fair.
Cool.
Vishy?
Yeah, one last note I just checked. I think the average best ball, I guess, draft pick number that I've gotten him at this offseason across all the Tootin I own was around 59. And so now it looks like it's gone up a good bit. I mean, almost around higher. Yeah. And I think that's why like that price was a fun one to press smash on. And this one sort of becomes more of like let's think about it for a second. But I think, he was one I think it's worthwhile talking about. And I also want to bring up Rome Odunze. I have a feeling that Eric will have him in his list as well. But we don't know. Worst picks by round. So I think Chicago is going to have a good, if not great, offense. And I think Rome could absolutely be a beneficiary of that. The Bears do have 3 pass catchers going in now the first 5 rounds, 3 pass catchers, which is significant. And I think actually what's fun thinking about this in like a draft strategy sense is typically when you have a situation like that where you have like several talented guys going early, I think it makes sense to err and taking one of the later ones if you think like they all kind of have an even chance of a roughly equal chance of being successful. Like we don't know which one, so I want to take the cheaper one because he would just give you a better return on the value. I think the difference is that the coach speak and kind of flashes of what we saw last year from both Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. It's just been miles better than Rome. Like it doesn't seem like it's an equal chance. It doesn't seem like each one of them has like a 33% chance of being successful. I think it's pretty clear, at least at this time, that Rome's the least likely to be, and so that's why he would be a fade because he's still going very high. But it's very possible that he could have a better season than Burden. We don't know that. We don't know the difference.
I agree. I think it's a situation that is based more upon like what happens to the pieces around him versus his own performance. Like if something were to happen to Luther Burden or Colston Loveland, obviously that's going to be a bump for Roma Dunze, but we don't bet on things like that happening. And the coach speak has just been way too positive to ignore, to be honest. Like they at one point called Colston Loveland the sun that the offense revolves around, which very poetic. Don't know what it means, but I'm afraid to draft anybody else when you're talking like that. So,
yeah. I think you make a really good point, Vishy, that all of these guys have an incredibly high ADP, and it's truly impossible that all three of them return enough value to pay off that ADP. And so there's at least going to be one guy that is going to be a bust at their price, if not multiple. And so, yeah, I actually didn't have him on my list, but he is somebody that I've kind of talked about being out on in terms of that group of three. And so I agree with all your points there. For me, I was kind of between two. I think I'll lean towards Quinshon Judkins, which is unfortunate because I think he's a really talented back, but like he's more of an in-between the tackles guy, kind of a bruising back, doesn't catch a ton of passes. He's running behind a really bad offensive line on one of the worst teams in the league. There's other bets that I'd rather make here. Like that's a bad combo. The quarterback situation is terrible. And it's funny because like I'm into like Casey Concepcion going way later, but that's a price thing. Like 5th round is just a lot to invest in really anybody from the Browns offense.
Yeah, 100% agree. The situation is just way too uncertain. Coming off of that ankle as well, one of those just not a super great situation.
Yeah. And then awesome. I just want to run this one by you guys because I'm not sure how I feel. Terry McLaurin scares me now with Diggs signing and especially with Tunsil going down. I'm worried that like it takes a little bit away from the volume and just from like the overall offensive environment being as good as we thought it might be. What do you guys think about Terry and whether should be going here?
It's tough because I think it's a little bit high. I mean, we've seen Terry also kind of thrive in some of the worst offensive environments ever. So it's tough to really discount him. I think a lot of last year was just, injury and whatnot. I think if he had been out there on the field, no matter what, he would have been fine. So it's tough for me to say that this is too expensive for him because he should still be the lead receiver for this group. But like you said, the offensive environment changes a lot with Laramie Tunsil going down and those long, deep routes not being able to develop as well as they could have. And that's something he really benefits off of.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I'm curious to see what his ADPs kind of look like over the last couple of weeks. But I think what this does is, and especially the Tunsil injury, is solidifies that I don't really want anyone like at this time outside of Terry, Diggs, and I'm still into Jaden Daniels. But like I think it probably bumps each one of them down maybe a slide or two. But like I do think it takes away a little bit maybe from like their running backs where they might want to bring in a pass blocking one more. And with the Diggs signing and also the offensive line situations kind of makes me a little more out on Chig. On a volume basis and also personnel basis that they might deploy. So, I mean, I think Diggs and Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels will still see my rosters this year for sure. But I definitely with a very, very small asterisk.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for talking that out with me. Appreciate you, boys. Let's move on to the 6th round, and Vishy, it'll be back to you. Who are you looking at as the worst value?
So this should be no surprise. I'm going to go with Trevion Henderson. It's kind of goes hand in hand with all of the Rhamondre discourse I've brought up in previous videos. I don't even want to repeat much of it. Rhamondre, like he's simply been better both in the regular season and playoffs in like nearly every aspect in every quantitative aspect and measurable one of the running back role, except perhaps explosiveness. And he's been treated by such as by the coaching staff. Even like the offseason coach speak has suggested that Trevion has some room to grow still as a running back. And I think I don't think the Patriots coaching staff feels like they owe him snaps for like a contract reason or whatever. Like he's still young, and I think if you can wait and basically like a round later and get Rhamondre, who looks like he's going to the end of the 6th year at least as of today. Just much, much happier with that price instead of the 5-6 turn.
Yeah, I also had Trevion Henderson as my fade for this round as well. I'm a big proponent for like how teams end seasons is typically how they start them or how they want to run the team. And we got to see, how these two split the backfield across like 4 of the biggest games of the season in the playoffs last year. And I just wanted to read off some snap shares between Trevion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson. Trevion Henderson had 38%, 40%, 7%, and 40%, while Ramondre Stevenson had 65, 59, 93, and 63%. So I think that just shows, at least for this year, right now in the present, they trust Ramondre Stevenson out there on the field when it matters most. Now, if we're talking dynasty and down the road, absolutely, I'm fine with Trevion Henderson and seeing how he develops. But if we're talking redraft and I need somebody on my team right now, if you draft Trevion Henderson, you're hoping that Ramondre Stevenson's going to get hurt. And if they're both going in the same round like this, it's not going to instill a lot of confidence in Trevion Henderson for sure.
Yeah. All of the coach speak this offseason has followed that same path of what we saw in terms of usage during the playoff stretch and during the back half of last season, where they still trust Ramondre more. So he was also on my list, but I figured both of you would have him. So I have some other names that I was willing to talk about. But Will, do you have another one, or was Trevion your top guy?
Trevion was my main guy. I thought about Jordan Tyson a little bit just because that hamstring really scares me, especially since it's something he has a history with as well. I didn't want to get too much into it because I don't want to get into, the injury voodoo of it all, but it does have me nervous for sure.
I also have him on my list solely because of the injury. We had him as a target in our last video.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is like the 4th or 5th time that he's injured this same hamstring in the past calendar year. Like, that's really, really concerning. And yeah, I'm very worried that that's going to linger into the season. And so I definitely think that he should fall in ADP. There's certainly a point where if he fell, far enough where I would think he's a value again. I'm really into the talent. I love the offensive situation. But yeah, there's just too much risk there for me to be comfortable in the middle of the 6th round. And then another rookie receiver that I'm kind of avoiding is going to be Carnell Tate. Very similar to kind of what I said about Judkins. It's more of a situational thing. Like, I think Tate's really talented. But for a vertical deep threat receiver, I know that he's more well-rounded than that, but that's kind of like his main calling card. To be on a bad team with a bad quarterback, playing behind truly like the stone cold worst offensive line in the league. Like, we just talked about it with Terry, like the offensive line issues and like longer developing plays on deeper routes. It's tough to bet on that working out, especially on the Titans. So those two I'm definitely nervous about for this year.
Absolutely.
Vishy, any additional thoughts with either of those guys?
No, I agree. I wish Tyson wasn't hurt. I thought we were going to see a fun, dynamic rookie, but who knows? It's so hard to project. And so unless your first 5 rounds have gone horribly and you got to take a home run swing, difficult to justify.
Absolutely agree. Will, we'll go back to you in the 7th round. Who are you avoiding here?
This is a situation where old habits kind of die hard, and this is probably the 3rd year in a row he's been on my fade list. We're going with DK Metcalf. It's just in terms of team fit, I don't think he's going to be, super effective in this offense, with an aging Aaron Rodgers, even with the new offense coordinator, Brian I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Angelico or Angelico, whatever his name is. I don't think his offense that he's going to be run, this looks like it's something that's going to run more through. I've heard Pat Freiermuth getting a lot of a drumbeat throughout this offseason as being more of a central part of this offense. I think Michael Pittman is for sure going to be more of a central part of this offense. He's always drawn a ton of targets in that middle to short to intermediate range that I think Aaron Rodgers kind of works more within nowadays. And honestly, just looking at last year, DK Metcalf trying to work that short to intermediate didn't work. And every once in a while, he had a boom game where, that deep stuff would open and he would, pay off for his price. But that was only for those games. It wasn't really a season-wide sort of a deal for him. So I see more of that just, being the pattern going into the season as well, that he's going to have some good splash games, but he's not going to be someone who's going to consistently go out there and get you points.
Yeah, I'm just gonna open my mouth. I just want you to edit everything Will just said and just play it back again real quick. Get out. And then you got it from there. I have nothing to add. DK Metcalf was my fade as well.
Well, let me let me
Eric.
talk about it too, just because like this is a, like Will mentioned, 3 years running for this channel. We're fading him. We'll fade him into the sunset for the rest of our existence. If this channel's still up, no, he's a fade. If we're still alive and this channel's gone, think about us. We're still fading him, I promise. No, but genuinely, like I think of the last 3 years, even though I still think he's a fade, this is maybe the most draftable he's been. Like he's finally kind of cheap enough. But to all of your points that Will just made, like Pittman, I think might out target him, and he's going 2 rounds later. They brought in Jeremy Bernard, who fits more of the target type that Aaron Rodgers likes to have at this point in his career. There's just going to be more competition in the area that Aaron Rodgers works within now. And so, yeah, I just think DK Metcalf is going to lack the volume necessary to pay this off.
True. Who else do you have as fades? Do you have anyone else in this round?
I do. Do you want me to go next before you?
I got DK was my guy, man. I got
DK's your guy. All right. Well, I can take over. QJ, Quentin Johnston, is on my list as well. So let me throw him in the 7th round bucket. Quentin Johnston. This is, I guess, maybe a little bit difficult because I do love the offensive environment. I love Mike McDaniel coming over, and I think that there could be fireworks for this offense in general. But I think that they're going to run the ball a lot. I think it's going to be a lot of the fantasy points are going to be condensed through the running back position. And I'm worried that it might be more spread amongst wide receivers than we think. I'm still into Ladd, but like I'm even a little bit concerned there. QJ, I don't believe that he's that great of a football player. I think that Trey Harris is actually going to work in quite a bit and maybe challenge him in 12 personnel for those 2 wide receiver snaps. And so I don't think he's going to be on the field a ton. Like I think his snap share might come down a bit. And obviously he, if this team runs 13, which I would expect considering all of their tight ends, then he's certainly not going to be on the field in those situations either. So if it's a spread offense with a lot of condensed fantasy points going to the running backs, that just makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm curious what you guys think.
I'd agree. I think it's going to be tough for them to both sort of eat in this offense. I think Ladd's going to have a pretty big season with him being more of that traditional sort of motor in the receiving game that Mike McDaniel looks for in his offenses. Yeah. And obviously, I think Omarion Hampton's going to have a huge season. I think the running backs are going to be super involved. All 3 of them, as a matter of fact, not even just Omarion Hampton. So I do agree that Quentin Johnston's going to have to be pretty efficient to pay off at this price.
Yeah, I think he'll have a couple pop-off weeks for sure. Yeah, make him like an intriguing best ball play, especially if he is around this range or drops a little bit. But yeah, I can see the scenario where he's just a really difficult asset to rely on in a redraft league week over week.
That is where I'm at as well. All right, let's round this thing out. We got 3 rounds left. Vishy, where are you at in round 8?
This is an interesting one. I'm going to go with Cortland Sutton. Kind of been a household name for a couple years now. Not like too dissimilar from DK. I think he's been slowly declining, and it's not like Denver has shown that he's their guy. Like they went and brought Waddle into the fold, who I think will have a really exciting season, kind of backed by his ADP. And there's some possibly, not yet proven, but still potentially good younger guys like Pat Bryant, I think, who has been getting some decent coach speak. So it's really difficult to project having Sutton to having a season that's above his ADP, which is kind of what you shoot for. I could be wrong. I think the tight end room in Denver is nothing stellar, and they will have to pass the ball to someone. And so I could absolutely be wrong, but I think even if Waddle were to go down with his triannual injuries this year, I don't necessarily think Sutton benefits fully from that. I think that we would then see the ball spread out some more with younger guys, kind of like what we saw last year. I just don't think Sutton's drawing that much attention as compared to maybe Diggs. I think actually I really would expect to have a better season this year.
I think that's fair. I think this is an interesting one for me. He was a full fade when he was going earlier in the 7th round, and I feel like he's dropped pretty substantially since the offseason has gone on. And like you said, we've gotten more of the Pat Bryant buzz and things of that nature. I think if you're just looking for somebody who might pay off their ADP, I think he's not a bad pick, but that's not really the way that we recommend people play fantasy football. If you're picking guys here, you're kind of shooting for upside and not really worrying about the median case. I think there's a decent median case for Sutton, but I don't know that he can really jump up into any of these higher tier categories. Will,
Absolutely.
you in the same boat? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
All right. Who do you have for us in the 8th round?
I got Kenneth Gainwell as a fade for this round. The thing that gets it with me is, when did Kenneth Gainwell become such a boogeyman to us in the fantasy football community to think that he's going to take so much work away from Bucky Irving? Like, he was a guy who in 2021, he was competing with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. And then the team brought in Trey Sermon the next year. And this is the type of guy that we're mixing it in. Now, I know last year he did have a good season with the Steelers, but I also think that was a product of them not really having many other options, like, at all, to really work with. And again, he worked well within that short to intermediate range that Aaron Rodgers likes to throw the ball in. But when we're comparing him and Bucky Irving, you're pretty much buying Kenneth Gainwell as a really expensive handcuff because they both have very similar skill sets. Bucky's just better at all of them. So if he's healthy, he's going to be the guy on the field. Sean Tucker's the only running back in this backfield that really provides a different skill set. Sure, he's probably going to take goal line touches away from the both of them. But if we're looking at a running back who's going to get a majority of the receiving work and probably a majority of that 20 to 20 yard line, work, it's going to be a Bucky Irving over Kenneth Gainwell. Now, Kenneth Gainwell's going to be a part of this team. They're going to mix him in to keep Bucky healthy. I absolutely think that's the truth. But I don't think it's going to be a 50-50 split like I've seen a lot of people talk about.
I think I agree with you. I'm curious, Vishy, what you think, because I know that you're a little bit less sold on Bucky this year.
Yeah, I mean, I do think like Bucky will at least start the season getting the lion's share of the work, like he kind of rightfully deserves. I think we did start to see that decline, and I think the analytics and some of the quantitative metrics do point to his decline, kind of coinciding with like Sean Tucker getting better. Kind of what I'm getting at, and Will was kind of alluding to this. It's like, yeah, I just don't think there's much of an upside case for Kenny Gainwell to be made if Bucky does go down for whatever reason. It isn't getting a large share of the work, which is at least what he's projected to get to start the year by his ADP. I think Sean Tucker will actually will have the biggest jump then, like in ADP and value. I don't think it'll be Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think we're all in agreement there. I was struggling between these two other handcuff running backs, so that's kind of like what this whole round is for us in terms of avoids. Dowdle with Mike McCarthy calling plays instead of Arthur Smith. We just talked about Kenny Gainwell in that situation. I don't think the Steelers running back scoring and target share is going to be nearly as high as it was last year. And I think if we're looking at one of the two to be the better and have more volume in the passing game, I think it's definitely going to be Jaylen Warren. So I'm worried about Rico Dowdle. And Blake Corum is also on my list for not too dissimilar reasons, but like just looking at the fact that you have both of the Vikings running backs going later, you got J.K. Dobbins going later, you have both of the Washington running backs going later, Keaton Mitchell, who we just talked about, Chris Rodriguez. Like, I don't see a ton of difference between those guys and these two, and so I don't know why we would chase them up the board.
No, I definitely agree. I think they're both very expensive handcuffs. I think Blake Corum out of the two would probably be the one I fade less. Like, I would probably have him on my team a little bit more. That's just situationally because of the Rams themselves. I feel like there's going to be a lot of garbage time. Let's run the ball to end the game, and he's going to benefit from that. But other than that, I'm not banking on that for my fantasy football team.
He was also really efficient last year. I just don't see him like overtaking or like even truly being a 50-50 split with Kyren, but I think you make a good point. Like, he's maybe less of a fade in this category than Dowdle. Vishy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with all those points. Like, I think if you're going to shoot for a running back in this area, like, you want it to be someone like who will have work, and then will have a lot more work if there's an injury. And like, I don't think Blake Corum, he wasn't getting as much volume as maybe you'd want from like an 8th round running back, with then the upside if Kyren goes down and having even more. I think, like you said, like if you looked at the 10th round just a little bit lower, like I think Rachaad White and Bill are just much better values because they will each get some work. And then even more if there's an injury. And I think, Blake Corum and Rico Dowdle aren't necessarily names that jump out in this range.
I dig it. All right. 2 rounds left. 9th round. Will, who do you have for us here?
I had a few names written down for this round just because I feel like it's one of the weirder ones, but I'm fading Alec Pierce for sure at this point. The injury is just way too iffy, and also just as much time as he's been away from the team, away from, building more of that chemistry with Daniel Jones and really solidifying what his role is going to be within this offense besides just being a deep threat. It's just a lot to not really bank on here. Now, at this point in the 9th round, it's not the worst pick in the world that you could make, but there's people I would bet on a lot sooner. Like I would bet on a Harold Fannin or a Michael Pittman Jr. or even guys going later in the round like J.K. Dobbins or any of the quarterbacks going in this range as well. It's just I'm not super certain he's going to come back at 100% and be the guy for this offense immediately.
Completely agree.
I agree. I think like for Alec Pierce to justify this value or have more upside again, which is what we shoot for, like a lot of things have to go differently in the Indian offense than what we think. Like, and that includes like injuries to Taylor Warren and Josh Downs or something, which we're not going to necessarily push to project that. And so, and also like he might not have an ankle. I don't know what's happening with him.
Yeah. Did y'all see the video of him looking like Bambi trying to stand on a slight incline?
No.
He could barely stand up on a hill, dude.
Yikes.
Yeah, he's not going to be good full 100% by the time the season starts, and that's going to be very nagging throughout, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's just, again, like in redraft, it's like wanting to press the start button with him is going to be such a rough time.
Yeah, even fully healthy, I probably would have been fading him at whatever cost he would have been higher than this, just because I think Downs and Warren are going to see so much more volume than him. But like that combined with the fact that he might not even be on the field, yeah, too scary.
Cool.
All right, Vishy, what do you got for us?
I'm gonna go with Mahomes here, because why not? I think he also gets a little bump from name recognition. Well, like he's coming off an injury, and he's in an offense like with really, really uncertain weapons. Like he's like thrown to like a 37-year-old tight end, or like a guy who was like rehabbing in jail. It's just so. It's difficult, and I think if we want to project the offense and like kind of play that like thought game, like it's probably going to be Kenneth Walker, who's really explosive, just taking over games. At least I think competent coaching staff, which knows more than I do, is likely going to say, hey, like Kenneth Walker is their best chance to win football games. I think Pat Mahomes could like just return to form and just have like a stellar rest of career, but it's like really plausible to see this year being a down year. And it's similar to some videos we've talked about in the past, like some other players in his range maybe just seem a little more appealing, like Brock Purdy or maybe even Jackson Dart or Stafford. So I think for that reason, he's kind of a fade for me in this round.
I'm honestly not mad at that. I'm not a huge fan just because I do like the Chiefs a lot. I love Rashee Rice. I think that by the time the season does come around, Rashee Rice is going to at least be a little bit closer to 100%, if not at 100%. So I am interested to see how this offense is going to run. I'm not buying into Eric Bieniemy stocks. Don't ever think I'm doing that ever. But I think Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day. I think he can make things work with what he's got.
Yeah. So Vishy, I agree with the points that you made. And I think there's even more. Like, I think last year, his percentage of fantasy points made up or accounted for by rushing was the highest of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's coming off of an ACL, and so you could argue that point. I don't know. I just QB 11, like, and especially behind this tier of guys that I really love, I don't see a ton of differentiation between the rest of the quarterbacks. I'm certainly not targeting him, and I agree with the arguments that you made. I just don't know that I'm as strongly against Mahomes in this case. But,
cool.
My main one was Alec Pierce for sure, far and away, biggest fade. Jackson Dart is like slight fade for me. I'm worried about the coaching staff. I'm worried about just the team being bad. It seems like from what I've heard and also kind of seen, they're trying to teach him new footwork and like make him more efficient in his dropbacks and stuff. And he doesn't seem super comfortable in that yet. All reports are that like their offense is really struggling so far throughout training camp. And like, I don't know, Vishy, you mentioned the other quarterbacks in this range, and I really like Brock Purdy. I don't mind Goff. I think Bo Nix is a really good value where he goes. We've talked about Kyler, even though we're worried about what that might mean for his receiving options. I think Kyler's a great pick. There's a bunch of these guys that go a little bit later that I'm more interested in at cost than I am Jackson Dart.
It's fair.
I definitely agree with that as well.
All right, so let's throw him in on this list, and then we'll round it out Last round, we'll go to 10. Vishy, what do you think here?
Oof. I'm kind of between a few, but I think let's finalize with Jordan Love. Just pick another quarterback. I think there's some guys that'll have good production on the Packers offense. I think Christian Watson and Tucker Kraft could have great years even, and I think their ADP is pretty high too. And Eric kind of talked about this, so this might be a little bit of a steal. But Jordan Love hasn't produced at a quarterback level, at least in fantasy, compared to even like the next three quarterbacks off the board. If we're thinking about this year, which is like Bo Nix, Baker, and Tyler Shuck, like it's just really hard press and click on Jordan Love, except maybe in like a best ball environment where you're hunting for stacks, just because he hasn't shown that production. Even if he is the next coming of Aaron Rodgers and just Green Bay quarterbacks, like he's obviously talented. They win games, but in a fantasy environment, he's just not as appealing. And so I think I'll call him kind of a fade here.
Yeah, to further all the points you made, he was the QB 21 and QB 19 the past two seasons in points per game. And then Brandon Thorne this year ranked their offensive line 29th in the league. He doesn't really provide anything on the ground as a runner. And like, I know that this might sound like a little thing, but like in conjunction with all of the other things, he also plays outside at Lambeau. Like in the money weeks of the season, you got to worry about the weather and stuff like that. And you made a great point about all the other guys going around him that I think I would prefer. What do you think, Will?
No, I absolutely agree. We're a few years removed from Jordan Love being, a really elite quarterback in fantasy. And really nothing about the situation in Green Bay is really inspired that like things are going to change from what they've been. It's like you said, they've been successful. Like they're a successful team. They win games, but they don't really do anything fancy to do it. There's no real explosive plays or anything really cool to look at from the Green Bay, offense. It's just them doing kind of what needs to be done to win games. And they run the ball a ton as well.
That's the big thing. I do think they generate some explosives. Like Christian Watson will catch a lot of downfield passes. Maybe we get that from Matthew Golden. But yeah, the level of consistency and the volume at which they run it is certainly concerning.
Absolutely.
Will, who do you have here?
I've got Jacoby Myers. I got him as a fade in this round just because there's guys going later than him that I'd rather have on my team, looking at like Deebo Samuel back with the 49ers or Romeo Doubs with the Patriots. But more so in the fact that, one, Parker Washington has been nothing but, the lead receiver from, team reports going into this offseason. They're saying Brian Thomas is supposed to be resurging as that deep threat, and he's been working on his connection with Trevor Lawrence. They're also saying Travis Hunter is probably going to play a lot more receiver than they initially had planned going into this offseason as well. He's been doing really well in camp as well. It's just when it comes to the roles they serve within this offense, Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington kind of serve the same purpose. And if there's one of them that's going to get phased out, it'd most likely be Jacoby Myers. So I'd like to take a shot on a guy, especially this late in the draft when you're looking for upside. I just don't think there's a ton of it for Jacoby right here.
I completely agree. I had both of these names on my fade list. I think that he can be solid, but similar to what we talked about with Cortland Sutton and what you just mentioned there at the end, I just don't see the upside case with Parker Washington, BTJ. And, even if he's not on the field a ton, I think the most likely candidate to come off the field for Travis Hunter is probably Jacoby Myers. So he's going to lose snap share as well. But what do you think, Vishy?
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the discourse and also like the rise in Parker Washington's ADP kind of just makes me scared about like all the Jacksonville receivers. Like I think Myers will be consistent. I don't think it'll be high. I don't think he'll be consistently 12 points a game. Might be like 7. But I do think it'll be consistent. And now with Parker Washington's ADP reflecting, I think where he should be going, like how talented he is, it also makes it like a little bit less easy of a click than like if he was going maybe past BTJ or right around BTJ. And so,
right.
I think I want shares of that offense with Trevor Lawrence involved, but it's definitely harder now because I think they're all pretty good.
100%. So yeah, I think that'll do it. This is our list. If you guys are interested in taking a look back through our worst values or players that we're looking to avoid in every round, any closing thoughts or like overarching takeaways from this group?
I think the biggest thing is just we got to keep an eye on what these teams are going to be doing throughout the preseason. Obviously, that's going to give us a pretty big indicator for some of these fringe guys. But I don't know. It's a lot of this has been paying attention to what teams have been saying, because I feel like this has been a pretty talkative offseason compared to others. But it's going to stand to be whether that can be trusted or not when come week 1 as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure.
Got to be smart about whether you're buying the camp hype or not. But yeah, I think that'll do it for us. And we appreciate you guys, as always, for sticking with us till the end. If you did, Will, you got anything for the people before we get out of here?
Yeah, make sure you guys stay tuned, hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button so you guys can stay up to date with all of our fantasy football videos and fantasy football takes. And make sure you guys hit that like button. It's absolutely free, and it's the best way to get our stuff out there to the YouTube universe. So please don't hesitate to do that. But with that being said, I don't really have anything else for the people right there. Comment if you agree with any of our fades.
Yeah.
Or you disagree with any of our fades. Let us know. I know there's some controversial ones on here. Looking at Drake London, I'm sure I'm going to catch some heat for that one. But
it's going to be me. It's going to be me in the comments, just going, I don't agree with Drake London.
but let us know down there what you guys think about any of our picks. We're free to discuss anything down in the comments.
Absolutely. But that'll do it for us, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.
Peace.